Good morning. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the motion adopted by the committee on Thursday, January 31st, 2019, the committee is resuming its study of the subject matter of this supplementary estimates B 2018-2019, votes 1B, 5B, and 10B under the Department of Employment and Social Development. Here welcoming from the Department of Employment and Social Development, Mr. Graham Flack, Deputy Minister, Employment and Social Development. Welcome, sir. We have Chantal Mayou, Deputy Minister of Labour. Welcome. Leslie McLean, Senior Associate Deputy Minister of Employment and Social Development and Chief Operating Officer of Service Canada. Welcome. And Benoit Robidoux, Associate Deputy Minister, Employment and Social Development, Mark Perlman, Chief Financial Officer and Senior Assistant Deputy Minister, Chief Financial Officer Branch. And we do not have, okay. And so we'll have opening remarks, I believe, from Mr. Flack. 10 minutes, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I don't propose to take 10 minutes. I did want to thank you for the welcome to the committee as a relatively new Deputy Minister of Employment and Social Development Canada. I propose to very briefly walk you through the estimates, the supplementary estimates that we have before you, which, as you know, see the department seeking a total of $181.5 million in voted appropriations. So the first item is $163.5 million to write off student debts for which all reasonable collection efforts have been exhausted. ESDC seeks this authority on an annual basis.
Les interprètes nous indiquent qu'ils n'ont pas les textes, ce qui serait facilitant pour leur travail, s'il vous plaît.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Members don't have the text. They're going to bring them to us now. I think we've already distributed, but we haven't actually got it.
Thank you for catching that. Is the interpretation working? I didn't catch that. Did everyone?
Yes, can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Yes, thank you.
Yep. We're good? No? Okay. We'll just pause for a moment here. Thank you. It's a good thing you're not needing all 10 minutes. We're good to go? All right. If you wouldn't mind starting from the beginning again, Mr. Flack, that'd be great. Thank you.
And to make it simple, we did distribute a copy of the remarks en anglais puis en français aussi, si les membres voulaient les.
So we just if you want them as well. So what I would say is that I'll go very quickly through the estimates.
The department is seeking a total of $181.5 million in voted appropriations. First is a $163.5 million request to write off student debts for which all reasonable collection efforts have been exhausted. ESDC seeks this authority on an annual basis. This is due to various factors such as expiration of the allowed period to use legal means to collect, bankruptcy, small balances, extreme financial hardship, and compromised settlements. Le ministère demande 3.
The Canada Student Loans Program provides approximately $3.4 billion in student loans each year. The program helps students in financial need access post-secondary education while ensuring accountability for taxpayers' money. The department is requesting the amount of $3.4 million for the youth employment strategy to help us continue to deliver placements under Canada's Summer Jobs Programme. On accessibility, there are two items to mention. First, the department is requesting $5 million to administer the Accessibility Canada Act to establish an accessibility secretariat and to increase support for the opportunity funds for persons with disabilities. Second, the department is requesting $1.1 million for the Accessible Canada initiative through the Opportunities Fund for Persons with Disabilities. This amount will serve to connect employers and persons with disabilities and to help businesses develop effective recruitment and retention strategies.
Is 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The department is requesting $7 million to support the establishment of a Sustainable Development Goals Unit and support the creation of a new SDG funding program. The department is also including a transfer of $96,500 to the Department of Indigenous Services Canada to support policy and engagement activities related to Indigenous housing and homelessness. Enfin, le ministère demande
The final item is the request of $1.6 million to replace aging communications equipment by migrating to a government-wide call centre platform through Shared Services Canada.
Mr. Chair.
And up first, we have MP Barlow for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Mr. Flack, for coming over, especially relatively new to the post. Appreciate you making some time and bringing this information forward to us. The first questions I would like to ask are relating to the Canada Summer Jobs Program, and you mentioned in your presentation some additional funds there to help sift through the applications received through the program. Earlier this year, there was a move to extend the deadline on applications. Is this funding to address that? I've had some concerns from constituents that the application process is more onerous this year, that it is more difficult to get through. Have you had that same feedback, and is this going to address the application process itself, or is it just a means to address the volume of applications that are coming through the department?
Leslie's going to walk you through it, but one of the key changes from last year is that we are looking to ensure that employers are providing evidence of quality of work employment. That includes mentoring for students as well as a safe work environment. So for us, I can see from an employer perspective how they would say it is more onerous in the sense that they are now providing more information about that to be able to demonstrate they're doing that. And that does create a corresponding pressure on us to be able to review that. But Leslie's really been leading the work on this, and if it's okay, I'd turn to her.
Certainly.
Thank you, Graham, and thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. Indeed, the application this year does require more demonstration from the employer around the quality of the work experience. So, for example, we ask employers not just to tell us, yes, there's a mentoring plan, but to explain what is the mentoring plan for the student. What are the tools you have in place to ensure that the work environment is free of harassment and discrimination, that where there are issues around things like hazardous substances, potentially in the workplace, again, that the employer is demonstrating that to us. And that is around the focus on a quality work description. Those MPs who have provided us helpful feedback on local priorities or indeed on upcoming soon on potential projects which could be funded would note that the weighting this year, and this is all transparent in the application, makes it clear that priority is being given for quality jobs. And so what are the learning opportunities? What is the salary being offered to the student? All those sorts of factors are considered. The second principal criterion, again, the points are clear in the application form itself around respecting national priorities. So those are everything from employment opportunities that are in the skilled trades to employment opportunities where the youth would be supporting seniors or from underrepresented groups. So that extra funding, the $3.4 million you referenced, is absolutely to help us deal with increasing volume of application, but also if we've asked employers to give us proof of a mentoring plan, we need to look at that and not simply pass lightly over the work that we're asking employers to do.
Thank you very much for that explanation. Obviously, last year we had a lot of concerns with the attestation and the Canada Summer Jobs application process, and I understand that the Liberal government has had to back down from that. They realized they made a mistake with that. I'm hoping that with the changes to the Canada Summer Jobs program, it'll be very clear on what is asked of people who are applying. But the minister also mentioned on Tuesday that the number of jobs doubled through the new program. However, the concern that we have is those numbers may be a bit skewed in the fact that some of those 12 weeks jobs for one position became 2 positions for 6 weeks. So easily manipulated to make it look like we had a lot of new jobs, but a lot of those jobs were much shorter duration than they would have been previously. I know this may not have it on hand, but Mr. Flack, do you have any numbers to show what the difference was and how many of those jobs became 2 jobs over 6 weeks compared to 1 job over 12?
Go ahead.
I'm happy to speak to the detail of that. We have been tracking for the last few years the number of jobs that Service Canada would have recommended to MPs for input. And one of the things that does affect our ability to have longer jobs is as minimum wages go up in provinces. Obviously, employers need to respect minimum wages. That's one of the tests for responding to local laws. So in terms of the program, last year, what Service Canada recommended ranged from an 8 to 12-week duration to MPs. We just got the data this morning. After MP input and review, there was a very slight increase in that to 8.1 weeks on average. So our advice had been our recommendations had been 8 weeks of duration and then 8.1. But obviously that's something we're always looking at for quality jobs for youth in terms of choosing to try to give as many jobs to as many youth as possible, but also to make sure it's has a reasonable duration. One thing I could point out, if it's helpful for the committee, Mr. Chair, we did survey employers for the 2018 program for the first time, and we found that almost 80% of them were either very or satisfied with the program. 30% of them chose to extend the student beyond the period that we had been able to fund through the program. So I think that speaks very highly to the objective of trying to provide quality work experiences for last year students, and this year, as the minister would have noted Tuesday, for youth between the ages of 15 and 30.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Can I just ask if she tabled that
Of course.
information
Yep.
as part of the study?
Of course.
Thank you.
MP Sangha, please, for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much for giving this information today and educating us. You have asked for the $5 million for new act, which is Bill C-81, Accessibility Canada Accessibility Act, and 1.1 million for the Accessible Canada initiative through the Opportunity Fund for persons with the disabilities, and 5 billion is to initiate for the new settlement of the secretariat under the new act. So now, could you give the committee this information regarding what will be the actually $5 billion will be going towards secretariat settlement? What is that in broad sense?
Thank you for the question. And so, as you've pointed out, we're seeking money for the Accessibility Secretariat and some money for the Opportunities Fund. So this funding now is funding that it will be in support of the Accessibility Act, but that doesn't require passage of the legislation in terms of being able to proceed. So in terms of the Accessibility Secretariat, that will be permanently funded within the Department of ESDC, and its role will be to maintain the implementation and ongoing administration of the legislation. There'll be workings on the regulation and general advancement of all the initiative that supports the legislation. And so that funding, which is about $5 million, as you mentioned, will support the Secretariat. In addition to that, there's some funding that was sought through the estimate for the Opportunities Fund for Persons with Disability. That program supports and assists people with disability in finding jobs, developing the skill set, and reaching out to employers. The specific funding sought in the estimates is to support employer and assist them in recruiting and identifying persons with disability, in raising awareness for employers in terms of how they could develop workplaces that are welcoming for persons with disability. And so there will be about $200,000 in Vote 1 for the operation and $1.1 million in Vote 5 for Gs and Cs that will be distributed to service providers who will pursue these objectives.
Do you think this $5 million which you are asking under the Accessible Canada Act, it will be the pays and other allowances will also be included regarding the employees, those who will be working into the establishment?
You mean the establishment of the organization under the Act?
Yes.
No, that will be funded from the $290 million that was announced for the Accessibility Act, but that will come later once the legislation has received royal assent. Mm-hmm. So once the legislation is there, then the department will come and seek funding for establishing the different machinery, like the standard organization, the accessibility commissioner, and the accessibility officer, and that will come later on. This is really for the Secretariat within the department to support the activities that will kind of that can be started before actually coming into force, and that will continue after coming into force.
So what will be this amount used for? $5 million is only for Secretariat building or other? I'm not sure about that. Could you explain it, please?
So it will kind of engage in a number of activities related to accessibility. So starting the work on the regulation, starting the work in terms of outreach to stakeholders in identifying, let's say, standards that should be developed first for accessibility. And so that work and preparing the groundwork for once the legislation has received royal assent, and then being equipped to move with the machinery changes that I mentioned earlier. So it's doing the preparatory work so that once the legislation receives royal assent, we're kind of ready to move fairly quickly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, another question is about the student loan, which ESDC is demanding now this money of $181.5 million regarding, and $163.5 million to write off the student loan. And you have given the conditions where write-off is required, that expiration of the allowed allowance means and the legal means to collect it, bankruptcy, small businesses, extreme financial hardship, and last is compromise settlements. So my question is, what kind of feedback you have from the students or employees regarding this program?
So in terms specifically of the write-off, and I guess the situation around that and how that's changed over time, the committee may find it helpful to have a kind of historical trend line on what that's looked like. The best measure of student default that we use is a default rate after 3 years. That's a kind of standard tracking rate we use. And that rate has declined almost like clockwork, about 1% a year since 2003, 2004, when it was at 19%. That rate this year, as we're asking for the write-off, is at its lowest rate we've had, which is 9.0%. But it's been a relatively straight decline year after year after year. That's a combination of factors over that time. That includes more flexibility for students in terms of repayment. As you may be aware, students do not have to start repaying until they start earning an income of $25,000. If they run into trouble, there are flexibilities provided to them in terms of when they start the payments. But it also reflects more effective collection efforts on the other end so that we can reduce the amount of the write-off. So I'd say the trend line is moving in the right direction. I did ask for a bit of an international comparator because that's sometimes helpful. It's hard to do apples to apples, but the U.S. system's the closest we came to, and their rate in comparison to our 9.0% rate is about 10.8 or 9%. So I think the trend line has been good on this, but it reflects both sides.
Thank you very much. Madam Sanssouci, please, 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. When I read the supplementary estimates, I have some questions. I have questions about what's not in it. First of all, integrating disabled people. There's another measure which is there, which is the disabled tax credit. And now what we're seeing is the number of applications that are turned down has gone up by 60%. That raises questions. We've just come out of a study where we've heard several witnesses who are living with disabilities, and they said that this was a very important measure for these people to allow them to make ends meet at the end of the month. Very often have severe disabilities. Could you explain really the increase in 60% in the number of refusals? Thank you very much for your question. While the administration of the disability tax credit it comes under CRA. They're the ones that look at the applications, and then they follow up with those people making the applications to see whether they're eligible or not. So they would be the ones to ask the question to. But I hope that you should be intrigued by this because you're there to support disabled people. How will you work with CRA to ensure that these people who are in need are not left out in the cold? We saw in the last study that we did, we heard from witnesses who told us that they had issues with the disability savings system, and they had to explain year in, year out that they had lost their leg and only once. So these people found it very, very difficult having access to the funds which are administered by the CRA. But on your side, of course, you're responsible for integrating these people and improving their living standards. So what are you doing to work with the CRA to try and reduce this number of refusals? Well, as you know, there's a steering committee, an advisory committee that was created about a year ago, and we support the CRA. We work with them very, very closely to talk about the reality facing disabled people, but they're responsible for their own legislation. It's up to them to put forward recommendations. Now, if the advisory committee has recommendations that go beyond the jurisdiction of the CRA, we will work with them to support the CRA, but it's really their bailiwick. Thank you very much for that answer. Now, starting on the 1st of January, people reaching 65 years old are automatically eligible for the guaranteed income supplement. People in my riding, or some of them at least, are not receiving it yet. And they come and they help. They ask us for help, and we see that they're not receiving this. How much extra money would be required for your department to make sure that seniors across the country are able to receive these things that they're eligible for? Thank you very much for your question, Mr. Chair. I'll try to answer that question. To ensure that we reach our objectives, our goal, which is to increase the number of people receiving benefits that they're eligible for, well, we haven't asked for additional money. It's part of our normal workload. However, over the past few years, what we've done is to do more to reach out to individuals who are potentially eligible for the guaranteed income supplement and also old age security. Over the past couple of years, for example, we've written hundreds of letters to people who we think might be eligible for these benefits, and we ask them if they'd like to make an application for the benefits so that we can register you and qualify you. Wouldn't it be simpler to register them automatically as you do for those who reach 65? Well, I was about to come to that. The legislation has been changed. It's been amended. It was amended some time ago, in fact. And it came into force in December 2017. So starting in January 2018, we have started writing to people when people reach 64, we write them a letter and we say, if you do nothing, you will be automatically registered for old age security and also for the guaranteed income supplement. You don't have to do anything, but of course you have to file your taxes, and you will automatically be registered for both benefits, both programs. It depends on the income of the person, of course. It's income dependent. And starting in January 2019 now, people are starting to be qualified and automatically for the two benefits at the same time. And we're working now to try to find ways of catching up for those people who were eligible in the past, but whose eligibility is prior to the change in the law. Well, I do hope that we will see all seniors in the near future being automatically eligible. The minister appeared before us and he said that EI is now much more flexible and our system should really be up to the standards required by people in Canada. We know that 65% of workers are not eligible for EI, and 30% of women are qualified or eligible, only 20% of men. The minister says he wants to reform the system. My question is the following. In your department, have you started working on a reform to ensure that you can actually take into account the new realities of the labour market?
Comme le ministre a indiqué, nous sommes en train d'étudier quelle forme.
Well, as the minister has said, we're looking at what shape this reform will take. We're currently working on that now.
Of MP Hogue, please, for 6 minutes. Oh, I'm sorry. MP Rumi, please.
Yay. Thank you very much for coming today. I want to spend a little bit of time on Canada Summer Jobs because that's one of my favorite programs. I think it's a program where MPs can actually make a difference in their communities, and I know that we've been able to, in my riding, increase not only the dollar amounts but the number of jobs and the number of weeks that have been given. I actually make it a point to visit almost every single one and look at what they're doing, what the organizations are working with them, what kind of skills are they learning, are they hiring people that match what they're taking in school, right? It's one thing, I think, to have somebody at a gate, here's a ticket, but when you have a hatchery, as we do in our riding, and then they're hiring students that are actually taking environmental studies in school, what a great experience it has for this. So you had mentioned the money that's spent there is providing the surveys. Now, that's very interesting to me because in order to make good policy, you need to be able to understand the impact of the things that you're having to do. And an example is this year, you no longer actually have to be a student. Could you explain that, what that is and how that came about, please?
Good question. Thank you, and I'll respond. Thank you, Mr. Chair. In terms of the change in emphasis, as the minister spoke to this quickly on Tuesday, the focus has really been around quality work experiences, and I think one of the considerations is around the move from student to youth ensures that there's a broader range obviously, of individuals who can be supported, ensuring that particularly one of the 5 national priorities around underrepresented youth. And so that really ensures the broadest possible applicability of what is an extraordinarily popular program. We do receive a large number of applications every year, and it's been steadily increasing year over year. So I think very simply put, the focus on youth is very much to ensure that those people who may not be able to be in school, whatever their personal circumstances, or who may not be planning to return to school, are still able to get their foot into the job market, still able to get a quality work experience with the goal of ensuring that they get exposure to the labor market, to build attachment to the labor market, and even possibly receive funds to enable them to consider returning to school if they choose.
Excellent. You had mentioned that you've already done surveys for the previous year, and you said that there was 80% satisfied customers. That doesn't mean that we're there yet. I can remember when our first year in doing this, there was a lot of challenges in 2015, 2016. I can remember people coming to me and saying, well, it's coming to us too late. It's hard to hire somebody sooner, especially university students. What else are you seeing from the reviews that you've got? Like, if you can give me a few highlights of what has come back from those reviews.
Happy to do so. So, as I mentioned in my earlier remarks, we surveyed employers for the first time for the 2018 program. And that was where we were very pleased to learn that almost 80% were very satisfied or satisfied. I should note that we have been surveying the students themselves, now the youth it will be for the 2019 program. And last year, again, we chose a different way to do that. We surveyed them via their employer and got a much higher response rate. And if I could share, Mr. Chair,
Please.
some of the information with people. The results from the students were very positive. 90% of the students thought they had improved their oral communication skills. 88% had developed mentor-like relationships with their employers. 80% thought they had developed leadership skills. An important note, 80% had saved money from their work experience to finance their schooling. So I would just note, we don't take that as an opportunity to rest on our laurels. The program is really designed to provide those quality work experiences for youth. So feedback from employers, feedback from the youth themselves are a very important part of how we want to continue to improve this extraordinarily popular program year over year.
And if I could just add one other piece, the program is, as you indicated, unique in that members of Parliament are actually involved in helping to set priorities. So to go back to the very first question that was asked at the front end about things that had been heard from employers on whether the new program was maybe too onerous or not, we really do value the feedback on this. We've given you the kind of operating constraints, the reason we've tried to put in a little bit more rigor in terms of what we're asking back. But you will be getting, given your unique involvement in the program, a kind of feedback that would be very helpful for us that we'd like to continue to receive, because we are trying to continually adapt and improve the program.
Thank you. MP Long, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, and good morning to our presenters. Thank you for your presentations. Mr. Flock, the government is investing additional funds in student aid to promote, for example, student experiential learning, paid internship programs, and apprenticeships. I know in my riding of St. John Rosse, it's a bit of a running joke that I always mention my riding. But my riding of St. John Rosse, which is a wonderful riding in southern New Brunswick, we were lucky enough to have a Skills Link program, the UES program, through the Human Development Council, and it's probably, not to rank them, but one of the most meaningful, transformational programs that I was happy to advocate for. It's a collaboration between the Human Development Council, Outflow, Shelter, the Teen Resource Center, the Learning Exchange, all these wonderful nonprofits in my riding, and it's offering training opportunities for at-risk youth, for youth that need a hand, a helping hand. Just an absolute wonderful program. And one example of the program is there's a shop underneath Outflow where youth are learning woodworking skills. And truthfully, it's a lost art, the art of woodworking. My background, my dad actually was a woodworker. So when I see youth, working on moldings and frames and sashes and all these kind of things, it's wonderful. And like I say, it's a lost art. And the program is so well-rounded that these youth, for example, are trained in woodworking and carpentry. Those youth now are working on a renovation in a building for affordable housing that, in fact, maybe some of those youth themselves may be living in. So it's a wonderful, absolute, beautiful program. Mr. Flack, can you elaborate more on how the funds for that training internship program, can you elaborate more how those funds are being spent and will be spent moving forward?
Well, I'll start. We may ask one of our colleagues to come up who is more on the front line of the programs. But
Okay.
I guess just as context, and I should state in full disclosure that I'm a proud Nova Scotian from your adjacent province. So if you hear me brag about that, we can maybe
very
compete.
good. Can I have a drink?
I think one of the big changes that we've seen over the last decade is the degree to which the labor shortages we're seeing are not just in specific regions of the country, but literally coast to coast to coast. And the paradox is this mismatch between jobs that we know are there, including a considerable number in the skilled trades, but the seeming inability of us to be able to stream enough people to be able to meet those jobs. And so the programming suite is really, I would say in some ways experimental in that it tries a range of different things to try to get at what the barriers have been to individuals entering into apprenticeship programs that we really need. So that includes everything from the use of interest-free loans to allow people to take apprenticeship courses. For women in particular, there are certain apprentice trades in which they are significantly underrepresented, so there's been some experimentation around that as well.
Yeah, I'm going to talk on that in a second.
So I'd say the suite has, and then the other thing we found is the need, and there's a pre-apprenticeship program as well, that there are some individuals who we find you can't just put into an apprenticeship program, and so what you do is you design a pre-apprenticeship program to try to get them ready to be able to do that. So I'd say the full suite there is used to try to get better results. But I mean, these are jobs that we have a high confidence level, even in the changing nature of work, are going to continue to be required. So I think they're good, stable jobs, and the program suite, as you indicated, is designed to address those issues.
Thank you for that. My riding is very industrially based.
What is your riding?
St. John Rosse. And, we are home of, Canada's largest oil refinery, strong unions, strong trades in the riding. And, we always hear about, and we've heard certainly on HUMA for really years now, great opportunities for people in skilled trades. But we continue to also hear there's challenges attracting certain populations into these skilled trades, including youth, women, recent immigrants, Indigenous Canadians. Moreover, recent data indicates that over half of those who begin apprenticeships never finish their training and get their certification. With respect, and just on a sidebar, with respect to women in trades, I know Irving Oil, in conjunction with several unions across Canada, is doing many initiatives to get women into welding and things like that. I mean, the trades offer tremendous opportunities. They're understaffed. I know in the riding alone, they say, I know Irving's talking about they need 1,500 to 1,800 new tradespeople within the next 2 or 3 years. So, am I out? I'm out of time. Okay. So, well, thank you.
Don't
I will.
encourage him. Wrap it up quickly, please.
Okay, so the trades offer wonderful opportunities. Can you just tell us about the federal government's initiatives to get more youth, women, recent immigrants into skilled trades? What are you doing to attract?
And I'm afraid he's given you no time. Maybe we'll have a chance to come back to that. I'm sorry. Up next, first of all, welcome, Honourable Member of Parliament Leach. The next 6 minutes are all yours.
Great, thank you very much, and thank you very much for coming to present to the committee. Great to see all of you again. I have a few questions with regards to disabilities, particularly the Registered Disability Savings Plan. I'm not sure who has ultimate responsibility for that in the department, but one of the issues that I know has come up at committee is the issue with respect to the closing out of the RSDP. Have you asked or spoken, and I recognize there are funds allocated here for accessibility, etc., but quite frankly, have you spoken to the government or to the minister with respect to grandfathering the opportunity for those grants and bonds so that individuals are not placed in a position of hardship? Obviously, the government has set an expectation with those Canadians, and then all of a sudden to be reneging on that and asking for them to repay the funds for organizations and individuals that really are already in a position of hardship, I think is a challenge. And so I recognize there may be about $4 million, maybe $5 million here for accessibility infrastructure. But to be quite frank, I think individuals are far more important to deal with. And how is the RSDP issue being dealt with? And is the government willing to grandfather those grants and bonds for those families in need?
Thank you for the question. So maybe let me spend a few minutes on what's in the estimate and then specifically address your question.
I'll ask you to be brief, though, because I have a second question for you, okay?
Okay, so I won't speak too quickly. So just quickly, you are right. Like the Registered Disability Saving Plan is an important program that's supporting families and Canadians that have severe and prolonged disability. In this current estimates, we're asking for an increase of $5 million that relates to that. And that is, as part of normal forecasting, we need to make some adjustment to the amount that are there for the grants and the bonds. So every year, officials will make a forecast based on expected demand. And now we're at the point where we realize that we need to make some adjustment. So for the disability grant, we'll increase it by $44 million. And for the bonds, we're decreasing by $49 million. And so that's what's covered in the estimate. More specifically to your question that ties the disability tax credit to the eligibility for the program, that is an eligibility condition that is part of the legislation. And so as you've mentioned, if someone loses their eligibility for disability tax credit, then they would, the registered disability plan would need to be closed. And there's a requirement for them within a year to start repaying the amounts that have been provided by government, not their own contribution, but the grants and the bond. The individual has a possibility to seek a medical practitioner to certify if there's a likelihood that the person will be eligible in future years for disability. So depending on the condition, that may be the case. And if that's the case, that the medical practitioner certifies that, then there's a possibility of holding the account for 5 years in the financial institution where the money would remain there. There would be no need to repay.
I guess the one thing I would ask is in your allocation of funds on the estimates is to educate individuals on that ability. I can be very frank with you, functioning as both a physician who deals with children with disabilities and their parents, that parents do not know that. And I might be the only physician in the country that does. And I just look to my colleagues on the government side that, I think we have a duty of responsibility to these parents, as well as individuals with disabilities. And I do encourage the government to grandfather what has already been granted so that these individuals who have disabilities are not found disadvantaged. I have a second question, so I'll be quick. With regards to Canada's student loans, yes, the trend has been downwards over, I guess now 15 years, going into the 16th. I do commend the department on that. I have some knowledge of the programs put in place for dealing with that. My question again goes to whether or not the government and minister have been spoken to about the choices for whether or not that forgiveness should be done earlier and therefore save the expenditure on the back end of actually trying to collect, since we seem to be forgiving literally hundreds of millions of dollars of loans, or if there has been thought to increased enforcement as there has been in the past in an effort to not just create flexibility in programming, but also to increase the enforcement so that we actually can try to close out this program and get it down to a more reasonable number, similar to what we see at a bank at about 5 or 6%, as opposed to, I know it was at 19 and 10, and as I say, I commend the department for getting it to the halfway point, but what can be done in order to make sure that we're recapping those funds. I'd rather see those funds in the hands of other students, or quite frankly, individuals that may have disabilities or other needs of Canadians, as opposed to us expending a lot of funds with respect to trying to collect.
45 seconds.
I'm sure you'll speak longer.
So
via
first,
that.
the student grant is one mechanism, because as a higher portion of what is provided as a grant, you don't put the financial pressure on the student in terms of what they have to pay back. The flexibility mechanisms we put in place in terms of no payment until you hit the $25,000 income threshold have helped by not putting pressure on those individuals who may have a bridge period. But also the flexibilities in allowing them to repay have meant that people who would otherwise have gone into default and we wouldn't have been able to collect from, we are ultimately able to collect from. But we agree there also is a collection side of this in terms of ensuring that we are being responsible with tax dollars. So it's the mix of those things that we're hoping will keep the downward trend moving. At the rate we're going, si les tendances se maintiennent, we would be at 0% in 9 years. I'm sure that won't happen, but it has been a steady 1% decline on this 3-year default rate over a decade.
Thank you very much. And I understand we're splitting time. We're going to start, first of all, welcome, Emanuela. MP Lambropoulos for the first half of the 6 minutes.
Yeah, so I'll be sharing my time with Mr. Hogue. So I'd like to kind of go off of what my colleague Mr. Long was saying as well. I do know that there was money put into the skilled trades, and I'd like to know what we're doing in order to entice or attract women to the field, as well as the Indigenous communities and other people who are less likely to naturally gravitate towards that field, or who think, you know, that it might not be as available to them as anyone else.
So maybe I could talk about the Indigenous piece for a bit. I had earlier talked about one of the programs we have that is designed to entice more women into the skilled trades. On the Indigenous side, there's been a revamp of the departmental's program, previously the asset program, which is now been revamped with a funding increase. And I think what's different about this program than other programs I've seen in government is it really focuses its efforts based on the Indigenous communities themselves' assessment of what the needs are. So rather than those needs being assessed by people in the National Capital Region, the funding is provided to Indigenous organizations who have expertise in this area and can determine locally on the ground what the most appropriate approaches are. And that has allowed them to then tailor it to, and Saskatchewan's one of the best examples we have, with an excellent organization that's been doing this for years, where they are very familiar with the local labor market needs and have had real success on the skilled trade sides in being able to stream funds into approaches where they have success rates, because as was indicated earlier, one of the challenges has been the dropout rate in terms of people who start but don't finish. So when you add the pre-apprenticeship piece to help people get them ready, you have a very local focus on what the needs are and what works. The results on the Indigenous side have been improving in those communities that have had success, and that's one of the reasons we think the additional funding that's gone into this will continue to success going forward. Benoit, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add on the other piece.
So yes, we could maybe add, I will repeat a bit, but we have, as you said, the apprenticeship incentive for grant for women that has been put in place, which is $20 million over 5 years to provide incentive for women to participate in trade. We have the Women in Construction Fund that has been announced too through the National Infrastructure Program, 10 million over 3 years, again, to support women in construction trades. We mentioned the pre-apprenticeship program, which again, accessible to everybody, but where we pay attention to these groups that are having less access to trade, indigenous, newcomers, and women. So it's not only a general program. We pay attention to that, and we're trying to target these people more. There's the other program that has been created too, so the list is long. Union Training and Innovation Program, where again, this is with union to make sure that they get more training, and we're trying to pay attention to the underrepresented groups. Finally, we have the Foreign Credential Recognition Program for newcomers, where we're trying to have them having their credential recognized in Canada, including the trades one. So I think that's the list of programs that we have to support these underrepresented group participating to the trades.
And for Mr. Long, I think we need to add the Atlantic apprenticeship piece, which is designed to attempt to harmonize apprenticeship standards across the Atlantic provinces to reduce friction and barriers between the two.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hopefully you'll geographically mention British Columbia along the way somewhere as well. Thank you. Yeah,
Maple Ridge.
We can go around the horn here.
Just with respect to following up on the question just asked with respect to the groups that are underrepresented, and you said you've called them targeted. What in fact are the incentives other than just, I understand targeting, but after you target them, what are the incentives that actually engage them?
Well, in the case of women, it's really the grant. So it's a national grant to incentivize them to participate. In the case of the pre-apprenticeship program, is again, many of these groups are not able to get into the trade right away, be accepted. So this program trying to kind of give them more wraparound services to integrate the trade. So basically, the program is set up where they call for proposal, trying to make sure that we target these people. And we get more of their participation. Same for the foreign credential recognition. It's only targeted to newcomers. And so this is how we trying to make sure. In fact, I would say that in most of our programs, we do not just apprenticeship in these recent years. We're always trying to pay attention to these groups. And so that there's always greater incentives, either through calls for proposal or through our service delivery to try to support these people and provide them often with more wraparound services than for other clients we have.
30 seconds.
Are we building any longer-term metrics out of the Canada Summer Jobs Program that are going to be able to influence other programs that we look at, other services, other ministries? Is there any experiences or metrics that are helpful to conveying the way we approach more broadly?
Very briefly, please.
The Canada Summer Jobs Program does fall under the umbrella of the Youth Employment Strategy, and there are a number of program components in that. So absolutely, as we continue to evaluate the success of our Canada Summer Jobs Program, we'll be cross-pollinating the other elements under the Youth Employment Strategy with our sense of what's working, what's not. And I would note in response to the member's question that there are programs indeed where many federal departments offer internship and other summer work experience to youth.
Thank you.
We will be making it fit together.
Thank
Even
you very
in British
much.
Columbia, I understand.
Especially in British Columbia.
MP Diot for 5 minutes, please.
Outstanding, thank you.
Specific place of the Columbia?
What's the name of that?
Hi, folks. First, I was looking at in the speech where you talk about the department is requesting $5 million to administer the Accessibility Canada Act, to establish an accessibility secretariat and to increase support for the Opportunities Fund for persons with disabilities. What exactly is being done to remove the physical barriers for those with disabilities?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. So specifically in the estimates at this point, there's no funding that is targeted to removing accessibility. But, if I may speak just more generally, as you know, like this committee has spent a number of weeks studying C81, And the whole purpose of C81 is to remove barriers to accessibility throughout the federally regulated system, including the public service. And so C81 will, create a system where we will develop, monitor, and enforce standards for accessibility for Canadians, and across a number of priorities, including transportation, communication, employment, and will create an infrastructure where, for the first time, Canadians won't have to fight for their rights, but actually the obligation will be on the organization to be accessible and to meet the standards. And so I think that legislation, which is now being discussed in review in Senate, will actually be historic in terms of advancing accessibility for Canadians.
Right. Okay. Well, we've certainly heard around this table from witnesses the sooner the better was the thought. Just turning. Looking at the affordable housing, we all know there's a housing crisis on many First Nations reserves, with families living in overcrowded, unsafe, unsuitable conditions. We've seen the headlines very recently. So why were $10.4 million in funds reprofiled when it seems that there's such a desperate need? And how will those funds be now used?
So we were supposed to have someone from CMHC here. I'm just wondering, is anybody here comfortable answering this? If not, maybe we can ask for a written response.
Maybe I'd like to ask for as precision. Is it the one we had in our sub B, or are you talking about something else in affordable housing?
I'm looking at under Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. Yeah, sub B.
So that's not.
So I'm afraid, Mr. Diot, CMHC is not present,
Right,
but maybe we can ask for a written response to that question.
Sure. And just while I'm on it, then also in that written response, I'd like to know specifically what the government's doing to address the housing crisis on First Nations reserves as part of that, and what metrics are in place to ensure that the housing investments on reserve result in improved conditions. Again, we certainly know the headlines out of Cat Lake and many, many other headlines. So it's quite an important issue, I believe.
You have about a minute and a half, sir.
Okay. Getting back to the Canada Student Loans Program, I know in my writing I make a point to visit every program in the summers, and it's a very well thought out program. It gives youth their first jobs in a lot of cases. They were very disappointed. A lot of people with the attestation. It meant that a lot of people could not get the programs and could not hire people. A lot of people were missing jobs. But more to that point, the one thing that I'm hearing now is that it is too short a time, and a lot of university students who want to work 3 months and have to because university is expensive are not getting enough weeks involved. So to anybody, what's your response to that?
I will speak to that, Mr. Chair. When we look at the program year over year, we've been recommending for MP input about 8 to 12 weeks, for example, for last summer. And as noted in my earlier testimony, with the 2018 program, our average number of recommended weeks would have been 8 weeks, and after MP input, it came out at 8.1, so slightly higher. Your point is very important around the length of time of the work experience for the student. And again, it's why we were very heartened with the reply from employers this year that as many as 30% had chosen to extend the student term beyond what we were able to provide. There is absolutely no question. We receive extraordinary demand in terms of number of requesters, number of potential jobs and funds. That's been consistently rising. And so we appreciate very much the local input to help us try to get as many jobs supported for as many
Thank you very
youth as
much.
possible.
And I'm afraid that's time. would like to thank all of you for being here today. We are going to suspend to go on camera for committee business, but just a big thank you for being here and answering our questions on the estimates. Thank you. Suspend.